You're watching BCTV. We're all about Brantford. You're watching BCTV, Brantford Government Television, a service of Brantford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Brantford.
Okay, we're going to begin the public hearing for the Town of Brantford Board of Finance for our meetings and public hearings for the fiscal year 2019-2020. And before I get into the formalities of tonight's public hearing, I'd just like to say two little messages. One is good luck to the Town of Brantford boys hockey team. They have a championship game tonight, so go Hornets. And secondly, I'd like to welcome Harry Diadamo as our new Board of Finance member. Welcome, Harry.
Harry.
And so tonight we will begin our public hearings and we will hear from various departments. We'll also recess at the end of tonight's meeting and move on to continue the public hearing tomorrow night, Tuesday, and then again on Thursday when we will conclude the public hearings. The Board of Finance will then deliberate and meet again next Monday to officially cut the budget and make a recommendation to the representative town meeting, the RTM. Tonight before us, we have budget requirements or requests from various departments, including the Board of Education, for $116,643,012. And we are estimating at this point in time revenues of $13,805,000, which would leave a net to be raised from taxation of $102,837,581, which is essentially a 3.5% increase in taxes. There's a net grant list estimated at $3.565 billion, which is a relatively small increase, but it's $13.7 million increase. On the expenditure side, we have total budget request of increases of 4.1%, and that is, again, divvied up between the town operating expenditures increase of 2.8%, capital leases and other requests on the town side of 47% increase. The total town side of the expenditures is 2.294 increase, and the Board of Ed is requesting a 2.1% increase in their operational budget, which includes also contributions or estimated contributions to the teachers' retirement. So we'll get into the details and go department by department. I also request that when there's questions or comments with regards to the budget, that folks use the microphones. Thank you, and we'll begin with the Zoning Board of Appeals budget on page 23. And welcome, Jim.
Good evening. Harry Smith sitting in for Jim Setti.
Okay, yes, sorry. And so we have a total request of $8,966, an increase of $89.
Yeah, the increase is just due to the increase in the remuneration for the board clerk. Everything else has essentially remained the same.
Okay, do we have questions from the board?
Harry, is that always 2% or 2.5%?
Yeah, I think it's been that way for several years now.
2%? 2%,
Nods
okay.
over there, yeah.
And questions from the public or RTM members? Okay, I think you're good to go, Harry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Conservation and Environment, page 49. And the request is $4,482, increase of $18. And you are Karen?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, welcome.
I think everything looks pretty much the same as the previous year, except for the board clerk increase.
Questions from the board? Questions from RTM members? Okay, you're good to go.
That was easy.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it. So far, so good.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. Next
Thank
up
you.
is Water Pollution Control Authority, Dan Gregory, and a representative.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Welcome. Page 30, actually, we'll go to page 64.
Okay, this, it's the budget recap, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, our overall budget has gone up 3.5% from last year. Our revenues have gone up a little bit as well. Most of the increases were contractual from union, French benefits that went up. There is one, we had an accrued payroll expense that we didn't have last year, that's for 2 days. The uniform clothing went up a little bit. And equipment, I put in an extra $25,000 for that account. And we also have a new account for memberships, conferences, and meetings that weren't on there last year, which was $2,000. I also increased capital for another $50,000 for my sewer line and maintenance to cover some repairs out in the manholes, raising and fixing some of the sewer lines or any kind of laterals that I have to dig.
Okay. So the total requested budget here is $4,535,637, an increase of $150,842. And it's offset by revenues from sewer utility fees and other town fees and other fees. A transfer in of $600,000, that's the same as it's been?
Yes.
Correct?
That's the amount we tax for.
That is the amount that is paid from taxation. Everything else is funded through the fund here. Questions from the board? Charlie?
Hey, Dan, how do you project in your revenue for another, say, almost 20,000 for sewer utility fees? How do you project that?
Well, the sewer utility fees is usually based on a number I would get from the tax collector. It's based on how many EDUs we have or connections. And since each connection is $130, it's the way I look at it. So it's $130 times, say, 17,000 connections.
Okay.
So that's where you get your base from. And then if everybody paid like they're supposed to, and you got 100% collection rate, you're good. But we kind of figure on, I think this year was 98.3% collection rate. And I think last year was about the same a little bit. So, I mean, we've done pretty good. So hopefully people just keep paying.
Thank you.
What's the collection rate on the sewer utility fees?
Well, 98.3 was the number I got, collection rate.
That's the estimated collection rate? Is that goods for sewers? You'll check that.
Well, basically for taxes, we use 98.3.
No, I know that, I know that.
I would say yes.
Oh, okay. Very good. Okay, other questions? Or anything else would like to add? Capital, you did go over to capital.
Not yet.
You'd mentioned the 50,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's no questions on the operating side? Frank, you have to come up to the mic.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One question, I see that you're gonna, first of all, I'm from the RTM, First District, Frank Toohill. I see here fund balance brought forward an increase this coming fiscal year of $48,000. My question is, first of all, how come you're bringing forward more money? And also, I wanted to know as to how much cash right now is in that particular fund balance, please.
I
Well,
think,
we can tell you, Frank, what it was
Yeah,
as of the end of the last fiscal year.
All right.
It was basically $1,807,000.
okay. Okay, that's one question, and how about the other one? How come you're bringing forward an extra $48,000 this year?
well, I'm thinking that's what I didn't use last year and it's bringing forward, right? And did I blow it?
I mean, Frank, basically, without a change in the sewer use fee, right? He
Yeah.
talked about $130 being the EDU rate.
Yeah, for each connection, yep.
So when you look at that, and then you see the other revenues he's adjusted, the amount brought forward from fund balance ends up being a balancer to the overall revenues.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, other questions on the operating side? If not, Dan, you want to move through the...
Sure, on the capital.
Capital.
All right, we're starting at 65.5 page?
Yes.
Okay. The generator and switch program, again, I've kept that the same, is a $50,000 contribution for the next 5 years. And we're doing well in that. I just purchased, we had 2 new generators we put in at Milo Pump Station, which had none. I had one in Victor Hill, which was an old 1973 Ford model that we replaced, and we put in a new natural gas unit, actually natural gas in both of them. And those are in place and running. I did purchase a smaller generator for Watch Hill Watch Hill Pump Station. We set that up last week, actually, but we haven't connected it yet. I do have 2 more that are on order, a replacement for Pawson Fenway Pump Station, because we're replacing another old Ford model that's there. And then we're also where's the other one? Red Rock. We're replacing another old Ford model that's there with transfer switches. So that way there, when the power goes out, it'll transfer over by itself and everything's hunky-dory. So that's been working out well. There is some balances in there, but I'm trying to use up what I have from the preceding years. I actually, since Cummings Generators, where I'm getting the generators now in Rocky Hill, they're on a state bid list, not with Connecticut, I think it's with New Jersey, but it does give us the lowest price possible for the generators. And now that I can do that without having to, like if I needed to order 2 of them and it's over my bid limit, since I know it's the lowest price, I could order 2 of them, I can kind of get it moving again. Cause my goal is to get every pump station that doesn't have a generator, have it powered at some point. And that's to the benefit of the city. When we went through Hurricane Sandy and Irene, some places were remote we couldn't get to because the trees came down through the road, which you ended up with a bypass. Not that you could tell, but you ended up with something because we couldn't get there, even with a pump out truck, because the trees are in the road and everything. So having the stations with power that you know if they're running, you're not gonna get a high wet well as long as all the alarms are working. And that's my goal, and that's what the NIPD's permit from the state wants as well. So, and I think that has been going pretty well. I still got like 13 stations to outfit with generators. So it's taken its time, but it's for a good cause.
Dan, how many pump stations do you have?
We have 51.
51.
Yeah.
Okay. Victor, you have a question?
Can you monitor them remotely from your headquarters?
Well, we have a system, and it's kind of old, but I like it. They're dialers. Like you'd have somebody broke into your house, it would hook up to your phone system and call you.
Okay.
Well, it calls our computer, which I just upgraded. I put in 2 new alarm computers with a backup so the stations poll themselves every day at 4 o'clock in the morning. It calls all 51 pump stations, or 50. Seasonal doesn't have a box, but it'll call, report itself, whether it's got high water, everything's fine. If it's got an alarm, it'll call the plant and send out. When we lose power, we'll get a no power alarm, or we'll get a high wet well. something's gonna tell us that something's going on there.
Okay.
And actually, those have been, it's like $2,500 per station for those alarm dialers. But the nice thing about it is that we kinda got a deal, and I probably should keep this quiet, but Frontier only charges like $650 a month. Anyway, to monitor those, but you can't find that today, because most of the stuff is all radio controlled, now you're talking big bucks, you know?
Okay.
Dan, how long ago, if my memory serves me correctly, you started this program? About 5 years ago?
Actually, it was probably longer than that, because when I took over for Manny Furtado, he had started it, and I've just been keeping it going since. And again, we've made some strides in putting some in. That's not the only one. We put in one before, the year before we did shopping center, we put in a new generator in there. We put a new one in Beckett pump station, we put a new generator in there. So we have been kind of scratching them off the list as they go along. But it's sometimes like we ordered the ones for Pawson and Fenway, when we ordered those?
2 months ago.
About 2 months ago, and, you know, when we get them, you know. And we're saving money now, because we're installing them ourselves with our wastewater electrician, so that saves us money right there. So like I said, it's been going pretty well.
Charlie?
I'm just curious, what size, your generator should get? As low as 20 or
The-
as high as 100 or?
Well, the lowest one we put in at Watcho was what, 20?
Yeah, 20. That's
20.
a small.
Johnson's Point's 11 kW. That's like the size of a house generator.
Yeah, I know.
And then,
Are you doing any up in the hundreds?
oh yeah.
Yeah, the one of these stations, Central, one of them, we got 150 at
Well,
Central.
yeah, the building stations have over 100,000, but the ones that we've been doing,
These are single-phase residential.
yeah, single phase residential, some of them are 3-phase. But I think the one, what did we do for, Victor Hill?
Victor Hill was at 60 kW.
60 kW. So, yeah, it depending on what the main breaker is on the station.
Milo was
So
at
when you
50.
replace one, do you upgrade it to another higher EKW?
Not if you don't need it, you know, and
It's
we're,
sized accordingly to the pump station.
Yeah.
Horsepower.
yeah, because each pump, most pump stations have 2 pumps in there, you gotta have backup, and I love backup, so if one craps out, you got the other one. The bigger stations have 3 pumps in there, like, Central, that generator's what, 150
So
over there?
50, yeah, that's a big.
And that's a new, when they built the station, so it's a new generator. And again, it's a Cummings generator, so I'm trying to get them all standardized for the
South
same.
Mount is Cummings too, South Mount.
Yeah, South Manawees is a new station, that's Cummings. Harbor Street's Cummings. So I've got a lot of Cummings owners generators, and the more I kind of stick with that brand, it makes it easier for maintenance. If I got a repair tech coming out, because nowadays everything you hook it up to a computer, laptop, that, you know, so if they're all the same, it makes it a little bit easier for the repair guys.
All right, we can move on to the next item.
Okay, sewer line and manhole repairs. I upped it $50,000 from last year, and it's just my reasoning is, we did do a lot through the consent decree of raising manholes. There is a few out there that still have to be, we found that needed to be raised. And there is some that when you get on like a state road or a busy road like the post road or whatever, sometimes it can cost up to $2,500 just to raise the manhole the way the state wants you to do it, because it's got to be cut right, and then raised, and then the state has but a special way they want them done. So you have to follow that, and if I got 2 or 3 of them, it adds up. If I just had an incident on Ivy Street where we found some some root balls when we TV'd it. They were at the end of the connections in the street. So to avoid a flood, I went in there and we TV'd each line from the lateral. We went in there, we had to end up repairing 2 laterals coming out of Ivy Street in order to get rid of the root ball, because the trees on the side of the road got in and did their damage. And most of the sewer lines in that area, the first plant was put in 62 in Branford. And the first sewer lines that went in were the center of town was contract 1, then contract 2 was outside around town, and then everything just grew. So the sewer lines that are in the center of town are the oldest, which are the terracotta, like a clay pot. They crack easy if they're settled on. Ivy Street has some issues with the root intrusion. So to be prudent, I got in there and we fixed them. So you really can't put that cost on the homeowners because it's in the city street. You could have a fight, but then if you flood somebody out, you end up on damages on the hook for that. So I've kind of increased it so that if I had to do a spot repair, replacing a line
got
that's
the
in
money.
there. Yeah.
Okay. Next one?
The apparatus fund it's been the ongoing contribution that we started a couple of fiscal years ago, $150,000 a year. I do have plans, we just purchased a new vehicle for the electrician. We got him we bought a cab.
Utility bonding.
Yeah, we had to use, no, that's right. We bought a utility body for, what was it, 4,500 or something?
Yeah.
And so we had it installed. So the electricians has got a new service van, or service truck, with the bells and whistles. We outfitted it with new tools, and it makes his job easier, makes it safer. So we took it out of that fund, and that was, I think, 35,000 was out of that. I plan to get either a new sewer jet or a new Vector jet within coming up the next year, and that would come out of that fund as well. And that's appropriated, I think it was like 350,000. We just demoed a jet Wednesday, and the price tag on just a jet, this is no Vector on it or anything, was 270,000. Plus, he had a neat little gadget that goes through the swamp for $70,000, which you hook up to the jet, and it'll give you an extra like 500 feet when you're going into the easement that you can't get into with the truck. This thing's got it's like a little mini excavator that you stand behind and you walk it. So if you add those together, that would eat up that money pretty well. But we're still kind of in our decision-making of what we want to go for and what's the best price.
And that's shown on 65.9, shows the detail of those, some of those expenditures. And the next line item, the sewer reserve fund appropriation, that's,
Yeah, and that's been a normal thing that I've been doing, and it's
Yep.
stayed the same.
okay.
And then this is a newer one too that we put up, was force main and sewer system rehab and replacement. And I want to get a jump on this. Like I said before, most of the sewer lines, like the first sewer lines in Branford, it went in 1962. So we just, last year, that we had a problem on Alps Road where the outflow manhole coming from Bourbon Pump Station rotted out. And there was so much H2S that the lines over there, instead of being the clay, was asbestos lined cement pipe. And the H2S ate the top of the crown of the pipe out, and then all of a sudden it just crushed, it stopped the flow. So we came in to jet it because we were just thinking it was a clog. You get in there, jet it, and you're getting mud back, so you know there's an issue. I ended up having an emergency repair at Quality come out, and that was over, I think it was 118,000 that I had to go for emergency, for sewer reserve, because we had to replace 150 feet of 12-inch pipe, plus we had to redo the outflow manhole, which was all rotted, and we replaced 20 feet of the force main coming from Bourbon into that situation. So, and that's the Bourbon Drive, I think, that area was put in 86, I think. So we have, and those pipes aren't the best either, the vitrified clay, they wear out. So I just want to kind of get a jump on, we have a list made, priority list, of outflow manhole lines that need relining or replacement. And right now it's relining. And the last relining job that we did, the big one that I can remember, is coming from 139. When we caught it, we saw actual rebar in the pipe when we went in there to jet, and we were getting all this white sludge back. We sent the camera in there, and you can see the actual forming, the wire mesh that they put in the pipe. So you don't want to let that go, because if, God forbid, it crushes, and now you're going to have a big problem coming from 139. So when Ump was in, we showed him the video, we went out to bid for it, and that was over $500,000. And that was a 20-inch line, plus a rebuilding of the outflow manhole from 139 So it went down the street and up Riverwalk, it was like 1,200 feet that we relined. And that's like $500,000. So if you can catch them and get them, maybe get them when they're smaller, but having a nice buildup in there so that you don't have to run to the sewer reserve unless it's catastrophic or something. But at least we can plan on it and kind of start getting a jump on it. You know, I'm gonna say 70 to 80% of the town's assets are buried in the ground. You don't see them, you only see them when you have a problem. And so it's kind of a tough thing to say, but that's where most of it's at.
Thanks,
So you want to
Dan.
kind of keep it,
Yep.
you know.
So, Jim, that 500,000 would be debt?
Yes.
So that's, everything else is pretty much out of the sewer reserve fund or some other internal fund. The 500,000 would actually be new debt. But that was, okay, anything else you want to present, Dan?
No, I'm good.
Okay, questions on the capital from the sewer? These folks doing a good job?
Thank you. Right back at you.
No, thank you, thank you. No, it's, you got a lot to maintain. It's an important infrastructure, and we need to make sure that we're investing properly to, not only for the citizens, but also to comply with state regs.
Yeah, and then the state's gonna try to throw down on us too from the state DEP. They wanna enforce another miscellaneous permit, which is gonna come onto the WPCA, that they're gonna have to do it. And then the WPCA is gonna make me or John, the town engineer, do it, which is a lot more effort.
Yeah.
It's like enforcing the fog permit.
Never ends.
No, it doesn't.
Joe, question.
Question, Jeff?
Can we
Yes.
talk about the 766,000 on the garage expansion?
I think
That was appropriated in 15-16.
Okay.
And that's coming up for, slated for work.
Okay, this fiscal year.
just getting to it, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, questions from the public or RTM members?
Where do you see that? What page?
On 65.5. Okay, I think you folks are good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Take care. All right, next is economic development on page 24. Is Terry here? No, I don't see Terry.
I got Perry.
Jerry.
Perry is here.
Perry. Hi, Perry, how are you?
Perry Maresca, Chairman of Economic Development.
Page 24. You get it? On request of $16,235, an increase of $1,050.
Correct. Really, the only increases come from where our costs increased. There was the number of trade shows are increasing this year that we're going to go to, so that added an extra $150. The rate increase of the New England Real Estate Journal brought it up, and then the only other thing would be the registration fees for the EDC members that attend some of the different conferences that we usually sponsor and we hold. We found that the attendance has been so good that it's good to have members there to talk with some of the people and keep things moving along. So it's been very beneficial. So that really is really the entire $1,000 that we're looking for.
Okay, everything else is going well?
Yes, yeah. I'm sure everybody sees a lot of things going on,
Right, in town.
construction and improvements. A lot of companies that we've been talking with over the years are expanding, and they want to stay in Brantford. They're very happy with Brantford. So.
Okay, thank you.
And part of that, and I'll, again, say the truth, the town AAA bond rating is really what helps it along.
What about the Coastal Resilience Fund? Is that a good one, too?
Okay, then.
Okay. So, questions from the board?
On the website and the trade shows, do you have a way to measure what value that is to the town? Like, can you get the number of hits on the website?
You could get number of hits, but those don't necessarily tell you who actually does something once they hit. You can have 1 billion hits, but it doesn't mean that they do anything by it. it's really just like any form of advertising,
Exposure.
you know? You know, it's just exposure, you know?
Okay, thanks.
Questions from the RTM members or other members of the public? Okay, I think you're all set, Perry. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next is Inland Wetlands and Natural Resources, page 25. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
So your request is...
Peter Basserman for Inland Wetlands.
Yes, thank you.
Diana Ross.
Thank you. So the request of $131,518, increase, actually decrease of $776. So anything that you'd like to point out to us, other than what's fairly obvious here?
I can't think of anything.
Okay. And questions from the board? Questions from the public? RTM members? So it's a total request of $131,518. No other comments from the commissioner or the... Nope. Okay, you're good to go. Thank you. Frank, oh, see? There we go. Frank, you have to come up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Page 74 gives, the pay, and I see there's a decrease of the 517,000 of about $2,000. What's the reason for the,
I don't know.
Mr. Finance Director, can you shed light on that, please?
Diana has a new employee, and based on the contract, they have a reduced rate for the first 6 months and then the second 6 months of their first year. So that's calculated into that rate.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, if not, you're all set. Thank you.
Okay.
Next is Building Inspection and Enforcement, page 35. Tony, how are you?
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome. Total request of $192,261, increase of $3,522.
Okay. And sticking with just the changes, it's 2.5% for the regular wages and salary. That's for the 2 positions, building official and assistant building official. And just an increase of $250 for longevity. That's for me. Pleased to say I've survived here for 15 years, and it's been a pleasure to serve the town of Brantford. It's an overall increase of 1.9%. On the revenue side, we're still targeting an estimated revenue of $500,000 from permit fees. We're currently sitting at $350,000, excuse me, as we go into the fourth quarter. And we're estimating $500,000 in revenues from permit fees for fiscal year 1920.
So what type of activity are you seeing? New construction, renovation, remodeling?
Yep.
A little bit of everything?
We have our Stony Creek Crossing subdivision underway. We have 30-lot subdivision that's currently going in right now. We just issued our 5th permit for that subdivision just this past month. We see some commercial in the pipeline, and of course we have our infrastructure town projects that we've been really working quite diligently on.
Right. Right.
We have the rec center and Senior Center project, the Walsh project, and the Blackstone is kicked off.
Right.
So we're
A lot of
throwing that in the
activity in
mix all along the way. Yep.
Yeah, okay. Questions for Tony? Bob?
Yeah, Tony, do we measure any feedback from our customers or end users? So I know we do a lot of things internally for our buildings, but folks that are coming in for permits, do we have a survey that we send them and ask what the experience was like?
We have never conducted a survey. We generally maintain and monitor their feedback. I can tell you the number one thing that they ask for is when we're going online for permitting. We hope to, have that project underway soon. Jamie's been very supportive of that. That's the number one feedback I get from the contracting world out there, is to have the ability to, work from home and, file permit applications, simple applications remotely from anywhere.
Yeah, it would be nice to get a feel for how they thought the whole process went, versus just one segment of it.
Yep.
So it might be something we think
Yeah,
about.
certainly.
I mean, the idea is, it was, at one time, Brantford was a difficult town to deal with in getting permitting. I think we've come, very, very far in making goodwill.
Yeah,
But
no, I
it'd
mean,
be
we
nice
try
to be
to,
able to document that
we
for
try
folks
to,
that want to come into
try to put
town.
enough information out there, and we always look to try to improve the quality and also improve the process to make it easier and streamline things for people. Currently, I'm working on projects right now that are developing guidelines for filing permits, and we're going to be putting these on the website soon that are generally guidelines for people not familiar with the construction practice. So any homeowner or person not familiar with the practice can, look in these guidelines and know how to follow the process.
Great idea.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Tony. Other questions from the board? Good. Questions from RTM members, members of the public? All right, you're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is planning and zoning, page 22. And welcome back.
Thank you.
Request of $313,613, increase of $1,535. Anything you'd like to
Just to
comment on, Terry?
Just to highlight the changes, it's really driven by contractual increases in salaries for employees.
Yep.
We did lose, with a staff change, one position's longevity payments disappeared because that person's moved to another department. And we shuffled a little bit of money around on travel and memberships and conferences, but that was a wash. So it's essentially the same budget as last year, in terms of the amounts, all the supplies, all that kind of thing.
Okay, thanks. Questions from Harry on this P&Z budget? Questions from the RTM members of the public? Frank, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 74, I only see 3 positions that are being paid. What's the story with the 4th one, Mr. Smith?
Page 74.
Yeah, it gives the pay of the seekers.
Oh, okay, there's a detail.
How come there's only 3 that have cash there?
Oh, at the top, there was no change, so that's the amount of change.
Oh, okay.
So the salaries,
There's 4 there.
is the same this fiscal year as last fiscal year? Again,
There is
maybe.
contract.
The contract hasn't been
It's still-
filled yet.
Yeah, so that'll be,
You're going to see that a lot, Frank.
Yeah.
And usually when a position becomes vacant, you might see a lower salary, so that's going to explain a lot of the variances in this, in the 70 pages, the salary pages.
Thank you. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Not all set, Harry. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, next we'll move on to the Parks and Open Space, page page 60 we'll go to.
All right, I'll put that one.
He's right here.
Good evening.
Ainsley, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Total request, $60,055. Anything you'd like to address here?
No, the lines are pretty much the same as previous years. As you probably all know, Jim Finch really manages the revenue side. The only thing I did want to give the board a heads up on, and this is under the category of really not ready for prime time, but we wanted to quickly tell you about it. As many of you probably know, our longtime open space warden, Pete DeRoss, recently passed away. And this seemed like a time to take a step back and reevaluate the warden position. As you see, we've had a half-time and a quarter-time warden since the open space warden positions were created many years ago. The open space acreage of the preserves, town preserves, has increased quite a bit. And I'd also say that in 2019, we know a little more about the importance of management, forestry, and environment management, management of recreational trails, and so on. So I wanted to look at the possibility of changing this to a full-time warden position. So I have had very preliminary conversations with Jim Finch and with Jamie Cosgrove. Of course, this is preliminary. There hasn't been time to put together a detailed proposal or any kind of numbers. To be continued, but we felt that we should just make the board aware that this was something we were looking at.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Charlie?
Is Anderson Wilcox still doing the quarry?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Jim, but yes.
Are they? Okay.
It's under a different company, but yes.
Oh, it is a different company, it's
Well,
not,
it's, yes.
Different
Anderson-
name company.
Different
oh,
name
different name company, but,
yes. Still
okay.
the same operator,
Okay.
as you recall. Joe, just have a question.
Bob, sorry.
Can you just tell me the job description, what they do and how frequently?
Yeah. Basically, it's babysitting the properties. It's patrolling all the open space properties. And we're talking about 1,500 acres with a lot of recreational trails and the parking areas. Looking for, debris, falling down trees, litter, that kind of thing. Signage, patrolling, trying to enforce regulations such as the big one we're dealing with now is no motorized vehicles, trying to control the ATVs. But again, warden could also get involved with more of a management plan and creating a plan, up to the standards of environmental habitat management today. And also we have volunteers that appear from time to time, really nobody to coordinate them very well. Meeting with the public education. There's a lot of things that we don't do now that could be done.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Questions from RTM members or the members of the public? Okay, Ainsley, I think you're all set. Thank you. Next is Recreation Department, page 44. Welcome, Alex.
Good evening. Joe, I'm surprised you and I are here tonight.
I know.
Missing a good game. I can give you an update. It's 0-0 after 1.
Thanks.
Even game. On our operating budget, under regular wages and salaries, you'll see an increase of 6.1%. If you go to 44.3, we had received approval for a new maintainer position in fiscal year 2018-19. The position was budgeted for half year in fiscal year 18-19 due to the construction project down at the community house and senior center. This results in a reduction in part-time salaries for fiscal year 2019-20 as the position will be funded as a full-time position. You had approved it last year, so So this is the other half of that position, which is a union position in the maintainer division. Also, security officers, which are the officers down at Brantford Point. If you recall, a couple years back, we took over Parker Memorial Park. That was an increase of 2%. Overtime at this time was kept even as contract negotiations will be coming up now, and the contract runs finishes on June 30th of this year. And then if you continue on to seasonal part-time help, you'll see a reduction of 4.1%. But in that reduction, again, is half of the salary of the position from the previous year, and also 2% increase for any of the part-time employees in that budget line item. Next is longevity. You'll see a reduction of $650. This number can only continually go down. We lost, for the second time in 3 years, we lost a union maintainer. In that contract, at this point, there is no more longevity, so that is another reduction. That's our second reduction in 3 years in longevity, and that you'll see that continue down because going forward there is no longevity. For new employees, again, accrued payroll expense is self-explanatory. It's 2 extra paydays this year for the full-time staff, and that came out to total for personnel services was 2.3%. Continuing on our non-personnel, you'll see it pretty much staying steady with no increases, with the exception of in our purchase services, repairs and maintenance of $1,612, and also other supplies, $1,264. This year, we are also taking on the responsibility of Young's Pond. If you go to page 45, which is on the back page right after the end of our budget, you'll see at this point, you'll see a budget of $9,415. It's a little bit of an increase. The seasonal part-time help, we did put in an increase of 2% in that budget line item, which is reflected in our budget, as well as staying flat on those other 2 line items, purchase services and other supplies, which came out to $2876. Again, as you know, we've been pretty successful with Foot Park, with Parker Park, and we're actually doing that also at Young's Pond at this point.
Okay, so
That's on our, so total of 1.8%. Our goal was, our board wanted us to come in no more than 2%. Last year was 1.9. This year it's 1.8 at this point.
So a total request of $1,171,256, increase of $21,267. Questions from the board on the operating? Bob and then Charlie.
Alex, so the 200,000 is not in here at all, on the operating side?
Yes, so on the $1,125,000 in the operating budget is in this budget, in purchase, service repairs, as well as grounds repairs and maintenance and other supplies is included in here. So $125,000 of those dollars are not tax dollars. And if you go to page 40,
Or 10.
oh, excuse me.
4410?
Thank you. Yeah, 4410, you'll see that, once again, the Foot Park Trust, we had put in requests again for a $200,000 grant. It was approved on January 15th of 2019. It was just approved for $200,000. You'll see that reflected in our capital budget of $75,000. So they've been consistent. We took over on December of 2016, December 29th of 2015, I'm sorry. And this will be our 4th season coming up.
Great job.
Okay.
Place looks great.
Thanks, Bob. Charlie, question?
Hey, Alex, when you did away with the Young's Park Commission, you moved over, what, 9415 where?
Well, I want to correct you, I didn't do away with the Young's Ponds Commission.
Is it still in
They're still
existence?
intact, yes, and if there's any questions, Mr. Holtz is in the crowd, who's the new chairman of the Young's Pond
All right, let me
Commission.
ask you though, back on your 44-2, is it? It
Mhm.
shows a Young's Pond Ranger.
Yes.
Is that a new person?
No, that was in the budget in their part-time. I might have, actually, I might have called it
44-2.
warden, I guess it should have been.
Warden?
Budget for $6,400.
Yeah, it was $6,539, and I did put a 2% request in there, which comes out to $6,670 on page 44-2.
Okay, would you just go over the temporary maintainer where you show on 44-2 what happened, where you have the hours and double the rate?
Yeah, so I really didn't double the rate. I mean, it looks at that point from what I did. We used to have another position there, but we have a gentleman that has been working with us, a guy by the name of Walt Ronblatt, who works part-time for us down at Parker Memorial Park. And he is going to return again this season. And that's a 2% increase on what he was making. He's a longtime employee down at Parker Park, and he'll be returning. We reduced the hours by double, but we increased the rate at that point to put the rate in for what he had originally got. And it's 2% on top. It was 22 something last year. I don't have exactly in front of me.
All right, so the temporary maintainer was 1054, now it's 23.
We had another position in there, a temporary maintainer, which we were utilizing in the community center for an employee at that point, and we reduced that position. We actually reduced that and put it into just our regular summer help, and we used some of those dollars to put in the temporary maintainer down there. At this point, that would be most likely a reduction in the future when he steps away.
So the hourly rate at 2301, is that reflective of what this fellow was making?
He was making below that, 22, just below that, yes.
And the plan is only
Only
20
to
hours
work-
a week?
Only to work 19 and a half hours for 20 weeks during
Yeah.
the seasonal time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions from the board? Questions from the RTM members? Yes. You have to come up to that. We have to follow Henry's rules. Come up to the mic. It's all yours, Dennis.
Alex, under security, do you intend to put any security down at Foot Park to enforce the sticker regulation, residents only for the parking? We have it at Parker Park. Are you anticipating doing anything with Foot Park?
No. No.
It looks like you're in the hot seat there, Alex.
Yeah.
And so why don't we go through the question? The question was what, Jamie? I thought you were going to comment on it.
I was just commenting no as well.
Okay. All right. So I guess that's your answer, Dennis. for-
Well, I got an answer. I think I stymied him a little bit. He didn't know what to answer, but consider that, you know? We talked about this numerous times.
I could let you know one thing. I know that we do, yeah, I already mentioned that about security down there. We'll take that under consideration, my board.
Okay, other questions or comments with regards to this operational budget? Okay, if not, Alex, we'll move on to the capital items.
Under our capital item, I think it's pretty important if you look at the top four items, general fund items, over the last past year and years, and you'll see forward throughout a 5-year capital plan, you'll see the $20,000 line item all the way across. I think I mention every year how important the revolving capital fund is. That's what it was last year. For some of the items that we have also in here, which is field renovation, basketball, tennis court renovation, field fencing replacement, parks tree removal, pruning program, and I should have another item in there, which is actually replacement of trees also. And what we're finding throughout the community in our parks and stuff, that there's a lot of work that needs to be done with our fields, with, the situation that we're in right now. Actually, a good example is Young's Pond. We already started last fall, a little bit of some work out of that account, because we are transforming that into some lacrosse fields at this point, because if you remember last year with the middle school project, we lost a good portion of the lacrosse field down at the WA school right in front. We lost the softball field, as well as we lost that whole area where the young kids had played lacrosse. So we're looking at other spaces where we could utilize to do some work on the fields. We started, Young's Pond was one of those opportunities where we had a big space where we thought that we could temporarily, for this time, the next couple of years, until we can get back, until we can do something else with our field situation in the community, that we need to put those dollars into a lot of our fields. Each year, we kind of rotate. I've been able to rotate those dollars for fencing, for tennis court renovations at times, which also includes basketball courts, which we have, about 5 outdoor courts right now, and that's with painting and lining and sealing and as time goes on. So we kind of just work where we actually need. Those dollars are very important to us as we go through them, and we repurpose some of those dollars. Foot Park tennis courts, you'll see renovation. You were asking about, did we get the $200,000 for the Foot Trust? You'll see in the Foot Trust, we have $75,000, which was actually for the fencing of 12 courts down at the tennis courts. We have 8 clay courts, and we have 4 hard courts. Those hard courts were first constructed in 1970, so we're headed towards 50 years, 49 years. If you recall the school project last year, they had 6 courts, and I think it came in somewhere between $225,000 and $250,000 for the total package. This is 4 courts, but with more fencing, and we're requesting also out of the general fund $175,000 at this point, which would make that project $250,000. If you look all the way down to Vets Park tennis court renovation, those courts are 37 years old, and we're in the same situation where years ago at Foot Park, what they did do, they transformed the asphalt courts into 8 clay, which are very, very supported by our residents, especially our seniors. They love having the clay courts. We're very determined to continue those there. It's very unusual for, especially when other non-tax dollars are paying for those. It really helps out a lot for our senior population. But the other 4 courts have been, a couple times they've kind of just built up on top of them. But we really need to go in there. We've been able to get away with it the last few years by patching them up, and by redoing those courts, we can really, with the fencing, we can really get it back. Pretty much model the high school facility in a way what they did to their courts. And then also you'll see the next line item, Vets Park LED light replacement program for $70,000. We did have a project out there with Honeywell, and we were able to do the Foot Park tennis courts. So all the lights at Foot Park are LED lights. If you haven't been down there in the last year, that project was completed last year. About $65,000 was the cost. They replaced 83 lights. It's kind of like Las Vegas, bright lights, but in a good way, that the old halogen lights used to kind of go out and go towards the senior housing. Now, the lights, the LED lights are just on that area, and obviously they're going to save us a lot of costs. The reason that we weren't able to get in the project with Vets Park was I can take the blame for that at this point, because I was keeping those lights off as much as I could because those halogen lights were really getting to be expensive. So we're kind of looking to do the same type of projects up there. We have about 70 lights that need to be replaced, so we're looking through Eversource to do a program. I've been in communication with the first selectman. I know that we might be able to piggyback off a couple other projects that are happening in town with Eversource. And that is our request for our capital. I will say you'll see a splash pad. Well, what's a splash pad? Actually, there's been a request from some of my board members about bringing one to this community, whether it's at Brantford Point or Flick Park. We know that's probably a low number at this point. We'll probably have a better estimate next year. You'll see it's off down the following budget year for $60,000. It's probably a closer cost to $100,000 because the water is what costs the most on that. And then also you'll see Vets Park tennis court renovation for $200,000. We're going to try to mirror. We have 4 courts up there. Again, a little bit of a reduction at that point to see if we can have to really redo those tennis courts because we're starting to lose our time on those.
All right, thanks for the presentation, Alex. Questions from the board on the capital items? Charlie?
Alex, if I look at page 4410, it says proposed new revenue source, Flick Park Trust grant. Do we have that in hand yet, or is that a wish?
No, we have that in. It was approved on January 15th,
Okay.
2019. We got the check.
Now, is the capital 75, is that towards the tennis courts?
Yes.
Okay,
For
good.
the fencing, yeah.
You good?
Yep.
Other questions from the board on the capital items? Victor?
Alex, on the LED lights, have you calculated the reduction from the grants that might come into this, or?
No, I haven't yet. I mean, all I did at this point is I put a number in on what the project was a year ago. It was wrong.
Can we estimate what, I mean, there will be a grant for this, right?
Well, it's part of a program, and we're actually looking into that now.
Okay.
So, still in communications with Eversource.
Okay, other questions from the board on this one? Questions from RTM members of the public? All right, Alex, thank you.
I'll give you an update, Joe, if it's good news.
Okay. Next is the Brantford Cable TV, page 27. Jamie, you're going to cover that?
It increases the contracting for the videotaping of meetings. This coming year, we're going to add planning and zoning meetings to that. And then the other increases, you may recall a couple of years ago, we included a contribution to BZTV of $2,000. They're relying on a lot of, on the cable subscribers as more and more people essentially cut the cord from the cable. They're losing money, plus the reduction in some state funding. So that's why we asked to increase that up to $4,000 this year.
Okay. Questions from Jamie on the request for, you call it Brantford Cable Television, total request of $9,680, increase of $2,480. Questions from the board? Questions from the RTM members, general public? Thanks, Jamie. Next, we'll do a sewer assessment fund, page 63. Jim, you're going to cover the...
Yeah, I got a bunch of those coming up.
Cover that. Sewer assessment fund is having estimated expenditures of $14,926, down to $152,000. That's a good kickoff budget for you. You ready?
Yep. Yeah, as you can see, there's not much activity in the sewer assessment fund, and it is a self-balancing fund. And, you know, the prior year, we had a transfer out for one of the capital projects. I know that some years ago, there was $1.1 million that was appropriated out of the sewer reserve fund for, I'm sorry, out of the sewer assessment fund for a capital project. Our new engineer is taking another look at that. It's been some time. It's the area over, not quite as far as Dominican Road, but it's out that end of town. So I suspect that sometime probably during the end of this fiscal year or possibly into next fiscal year, we would then be coming back to the Board of Finance to appropriate money out of the sewer assessment fund for that project.
What's the balance in there, Jim, now?
It's, right in a second, it's a healthy balance, and that's why we used it last time. It is. Usually I write it down on the page. Sewer assessment fund is about $3 million.
Now, any new projects that hook in, that money's going to this assessment fund?
Yes.
So any of the new projects that that Tony was referring to out east, those are sewer projects, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes, they would have an assessment they would hook into.
And those aren't necessarily in this budget estimate?
No, because it doesn't have any expenditures offset.
Right, okay, got you, okay. Questions on this sewer assessment fund from Jim? Questions from the general public? Peter, you have to come up and use a mic.
Thanks, Joe. Jim, how does this interact with the $500,000 that we were talking to borrow for the repair of our sewer system? I mean, will that flow through the sewer assessment fund? Will that be funded through general taxation? Is that?
No, that'll be bonded separately.
But bonded and then supported by general taxation, not
Right.
by sewer assessments when we've got $3 million in the sewer assessment fund.
That's correct.
Thank you for your questions and comments. Other questions, Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, Mr. Finch, on page 63, see, in the past, we used to have a column which would show actual as of like the first of this month, and it's gone from the book, but I guess it's been asked for. But anyway, as far as legal...
Wait a second, did you ask for it?
I didn't ask for it, but I was told, but, I mean,
Okay.
but it's been in the book, it's been in our books before, too. But anyway, so the question I have is on legal. It shows that $2,865 was the total spent for fiscal year 18, and the request is now for about $10,000. What's the reason for the increase, please?
Well, it's not an increase from the current year. So the current year had 11,000, and this year is 11,000.
Yeah, well,
It's an increase over the actual. It's not an increase
It
from
was
the
actually
overall.
last year's question, but that's okay. So there's actually 11,000 in this current budget, Frank.
no, right, I
and 11
understand that, but my question is, right, from the figures that we have before us, it shows that only $2,865 was spent total for fiscal year 2018. Right, this is 2019 we're in now.
Correct.
And this is the figure requested for 2020. I understand all that, but I don't see why we're asking for 11,000 when we only spent 2865, you know.
Gotcha,
back-
I understand.
What?
I understand your question.
It's a fair question. I don't know if Jim has the answer tonight for
I
that.
mean, basically, like I said before, it's a self-balancing fund, so if you budget less for legal, obviously, then you know, we would adjust the revenues lower, because the revenues and the expenditures would match. So again, and then if you did have new assessments that you needed to add, and if Attorney Burdun needed more money than that, then they'd have to come back and amend the budget.
So let me ask you too, the sewer authority, I call it the sewer authority, that they approve these bills for the,
They approve the assessments, yes.
they approve the assessment, do they approve the expenditures?
Yes.
No, you
Yes and no.
Well,
No, you did-
once it comes through here.
You did the sewer utility fund.
Right.
Yeah, the sewer assessment fund,
Right.
you approved the new assessments. And I think, I want to go back to Peter's question, because there may be some confusion here, is the money that got appropriated out of the sewer assessment fund was for people that were putting in new lines, or people are connected to a sewer that previously didn't have it. And so those would be paid for through sewer assessments. The money that Dan Gregory asked for is for maintaining existing sewer lines.
Right, no,
So that is something.
Yeah, we can talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I should have added a little more
We've
context.
had a balance for a while of unused funds from prior projects, I think. So
Well, that's a different.
that's what this is.
Okay, so Bob, you have a question?
Yeah, maybe I could help address Frank's issue on the legal side. I think what the Sewer Commission is also looking at is looking at the districts. The numbers are very different in every district, so they're looking at the code, the whole code, and possibly rewriting that and bringing that over to the RTM once it's done. So I know Attorney Burdun has been working on that also. So, you know, reason that you're seeing more coming in 2019 than you did in 18.
Thanks, Bob, for that. Okay, other questions on the sewer assessment fund? If not, we'll move on to the public celebration, page 48. Again, Jim, these are all yours. A request of $30,143, increase of $1,075.
Okay, the public celebration is, essentially it's the seasonal part-time help, the 2% increase. That is for the town band director. And then the rest of the budget, you have items such as other supplies, which involves, a lot of it is actually for the music that they buy for the band. Each year they place in orders, and there's a company called J.W. Pepper that's basically is where they do most of their ordering from. There's a contribution to the Brantford Chorale. And then in terms of the patriotic observance, those are for the two parades. And then the fireworks is, that's pretty self-explanatory. That's the money that gets contributed to the Brantford Fireworks group. And they also do some fundraising in addition to that.
All right. Thank you. Questions on this budget, $30,143. Questions from the board? Questions from RTM members or general public? Sir?
How much is the fireworks committee raising these days? Dennis?
Excuse me, could you come up to the mic? Yeah, I apologize, I should have asked you to step up to the mic.
Hey, Jim. Hey, good. How much is the fireworks committee?
Oh, you're asking me? I thought you were asking
Well,
Jeff. I thought you were asking
Yeah, I
Jeff.
think
I'm asking somebody. So.
Well, we'd like you to, fine. You're asking the question is how much?
How much is the fireworks committee raising as part of the contribution to the fireworks?
Mark, I'll take that question, since I'm the chairman of the Fireworks Committee.
Thank you.
In the past years, we've raised somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 from the residents and businesses in the town of Brantford. We're having our first meeting next Thursday night at 7 o'clock here in this building that will set up our plans for the current year.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks, Jim. We'll move on to the next budget, employee group insurance. Page 56. Page 56, total request $6,803,654.
Okay, the employee group insurance, there's really two areas of this. One is the health insurance premiums. The town of Brantford is largely self-insured for medical benefits. There are some groups that are fully insured, but that's really relates to the retirees. And there's a small piece there which is over 65, where there's an F plan which we have insurance. So this basically funds all of our medical, pharmacy, and dental claims. It also covers the various fees, individual stop loss, aggregate stop loss, the network fees, etc. And our experience has been decent as of late, and so we're not seeking an increase there. The other is the transfer out for the other post-employment benefits. That's $795,000, and again, that is largely for calculation that the actuaries do in terms of what our requirements are to the fund. We're looking at other numbers for that, so there may be an adjustment downward from what that number is. A lot of calculations have been occurring throughout the budget process, so there may be a recommendation to take the foot off the gas a little bit on that number. So,
thank you, Jim. Questions on this budget from Jim? Charlie?
Yep.
And the 6 million, is that primarily dental?
Primarily what?
And the 6 million that's appropriated, is that primarily for dental?
No.
coverage?
The dental is a very small piece of that. So the dental piece is roughly about $120,000 on the town side. The bulk of that, roughly about $4.5 million, is medical and pharmacy costs. And then there's also costs for the various fees, which are about in the hundreds of thousands as well. You have the individual stop loss and the aggregate stop loss. And then we're also, accounting for the fact that the budget includes, 8 firefighters.
Oh.
When you're comparing the two budgets year over year. So. But.
Jim, does
go
this
ahead.
include the BOE? Does it include the Board?
No. The Board of Education budgets their self-insurance separately from us. We work together. We use the same consultant, but historically we're rated separately. And that's a discussion that's come up over the years, because what that does for the town is, because if you think about statistics, the town is a smaller sample, so changes will fluctuate more in a smaller sample. If we were blended with the Board of Ed, things would move differently. But we haven't been able to come to an agreement on that. And I think that you may recall last year around this time, one of the things we were looking at was possibly moving out of the self-insurance and looking at the what's called the Connecticut Partnership Plan. But obviously, that would take some work. As you know, these are most of the employees are under collective bargaining agreements. The largest single bargaining unit would be the teachers. So we have to see some where that goes. So.
Thanks.
Other questions at this time from Jim on this budget? Questions from the RTM members, the general public? Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Finch, in the, my question is, in the account for the self-insurance, what's our fund balance?
Okay, actually, I'll give it to you.
What page you on, Jim?
Yeah, I'm gonna actually refer to the audit.
The audit, I know.
He's asking what the self-insurance fund balance is. As of last year, it was 16 million.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Questions, additional questions from the public on this budget? None, thank you, Jim.
Yes.
Move on to the next budget. Municipal insurance, page 57, request of $2,362,757, increase of $16,306.
Okay, we have a couple areas here. I'll start with the first line, which is the property and auto and general liability insurance. That covers a whole host of things. You know, it includes general liability, our property, auto, excess liability, you know, the boat, underground storage tanks, a small amount that we're unbonded, folks in the tax office are bonded, and it also includes, if I didn't say law enforcement, it includes law enforcement, so, yeah.
All of the coverage.
Yeah, it's a whole variety of coverage.
Questions on insurance? We'll take this one shot at a time. Victor?
Do we have underground storage tanks still?
Yeah, yes, we do. Yeah, there's one at the, this policy covers a storage tank, the fuel tank at the police station.
Thank you.
Charlie?
Hey, Jim, how big a portion of this 922 is liability?
Well, general liability is it's 197,000. So if we round up to $1 million, I'm going to say it's about 19%.
And that covers everybody who works for the town and the police and fire and everything?
Well, fire would be property insurance.
You're talking about all town personnel?
Yeah,
Yes,
all town personnel.
other than Board of Ed.
Yeah. Yeah, the Board of Ed has insurance.
Boards and commissions.
Okay.
Other questions on the liability?
But remember, Charlie, there's also an excess on top of that, so.
Yeah.
So it's like having an umbrella in addition
It's
to
an
your.
umbrella on top.
Is there ceiling?
Well, the umbrella goes up to what?
Yeah, I'm not, you know, I don't know.
Couple $1 million?
It's high. I don't remember exactly what the umbrella covers. Again, I could ask Margaret, whose department handles that more directly. But.
Yeah, I'm just curious, because I think that's very inexpensive to cover all the people.
But we're not troubled by that.
Well, no, I know, but is it enough?
Okay.
Well, when you say cover the people, you're talking about our people doing something that would basically cause them to get sued as acting on behalf of the town, right?
No, I'm thinking somebody who trips on the floor in the town hall.
Well, that's workers' comp.
Workers' comp.
That's workers' comp. Yeah, that is actually in the
A
third.
taxpayer who walks into
third
the
line.
town hall trips and falls.
Well, if a taxpayer walks into town hall and trips and falls, and they would make a claim, they would go to Lisa's office, they'd file a claim, and then Lisa sends it to our HR department, who's in charge of risk management, and then a copy also goes out to town council, and I believe it goes to our insurance folks at HD Seeger.
Okay.
Why not, just wear good shoes in town hall, Charlie.
All right, let's move on.
Question is, did they pay their taxes?
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on the insurance?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's the insurance damage. That usually covers our deductibles. And you may recall, RTM probably recalls too, is that we've actually, throughout the year, we've done some transfers sometimes to increase that account. Because what will happen is if we're getting more recoveries, so we get in a car accident, we get the money back, right? So the money comes in as a revenue, and then the deductible goes out on the expense. In some cases, the car's total, it's only worth $3,000, then this account ends up being higher. So that's why you'd see some years there's more actually spent than that. The workers' comp, we are self-funded for workers' comp. I do have some good news to report. I mentioned, I think it was at the January meeting, that when we were talking about managing our self-insured risks and looking at our health insurance, and looking at our OPEB accounts together, one of the things on the workers' comp is we did have an actuary look at our balances, and right now, our reserves are appropriate based on our exposure. So that's good news, because 2 years back, we actually appropriated additional money into the workers' comp fund, and we talked about how some of our claims were undeveloped, and so what this actuary report did is looked at it and developed a claim. So at least for me, looking at it from a self-insured risk, it gives me a little bit more comfort that I had another outside group look at this and look at our reserves.
Okay, thanks. Good on that, Jim. The heart and hypertension?
And again, heart and hypertension is flat, and basically, you got to anticipate probably, essentially you could get one big claim a year, and so that's what we cover. There is no other insurance to buy for that, so we're on the hook for that. And many years ago, that fund, we used to book a deficit in that fund, and so we don't anymore. So that's actually a good thing. So.
Okay, other questions from this budget?
And I anticipate a question that will be asked about the fund balances. So the fund balances in the workers' comp fund is $2.4 million as of last year, and the heart and hypertension was $306,000 as of last year.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, other questions? If not, questions from the public or RTM members with regards to this budget? Municipal insurance, again, it's a request of $2.362 million, increase to $16,000. With no other questions, we will move to the next budget, pensions and contributions on page 55. Request of $5,018,000. Jim, again, you have an increase of $429,000 requested. Page 55 for us, Jim.
Yep. Okay. Okay, there's a couple things at work here. When you see the increase of $429,000 over the current year, the largest piece of that is the retirement for municipal employees. And I don't know how well reported this was, but the state of Connecticut runs a fund called the MERS Fund, Municipal Employees Retirement System. And all town employees, with the exception of police officers and part-time employees, are in that fund. And they were using a return assumption of 8%. And the Retirement Commission, I think, voted, I think it was probably in December or January, to lower the return assumption to 7%. And they were phasing in over time. And as a result of that, our amounts are going up roughly 20%. And that's going to be an ongoing item from 2020, 2021, 2, 3, and 4, until it finally gets equalized. This is one of the things, I was contacted by CCM, Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, and they were asking how it would impact Brantford. I responded in an email, and they said, do you want to basically make comments about it? And fortunately, they didn't follow up on that because, in all honesty, I was a little bit torn. I was torn because we've sat at many meetings and we've talked about the state's financial crisis. And we've talked about essentially them being on the wrong side of compound interest, and we've talked about the state using unrealistic assumptions. And so if they're using a 7% and we're using south of 7 in both our police pension fund and the OPEB, can I in good conscience criticize the state for lowering it to 7? And the short answer is no. But, am I happy with the result in terms of what it does to our budget? No, I'm not, but I understand it, and so I was less inclined to basically protest on it. So.
Well, thank you for that. Do we have questions on this budget from Jim? I think they're fairly self-explanatory, other than what Jim provided with us. So the retirement, that includes a higher rate for fire and
Yes.
rate for the municipal employees. And total request $5,018,044. Questions from Jim on this budget? Questions from the RTM members or general public? With none, we'll move on to the next budget, which is contingency, page 58. And we have a request of $1,463,512 increase. Jim, what was the budget we started off with for this current fiscal year?
It was over, I know it was easily over $1 million. Because we did 175,000 recently for the firehouse. Let me just get it for you. It's
1,274,216.
go ahead, wasn't it?
$1,274,216.
216.
So what happens is this budget, this $922,000 is reflective of the balance.
Yes.
Because everything has to move around. So we actually started off last year with $1,274,000. This year, we're looking at $1,004,000. It does show an increase of $541,000, but the relative increase is between the $1,463,000 and the $1,274,000. Do you want to comment on the budget, Jim?
Yeah. I mean, basically, when we look at the contingency in it, and I think it's fair to say it's more art than science, right, Don? So we've had this discussion, right? So basic.
Jim, this is facing forward.
No, I'm sorry. I knew it was going to come. I'm anticipating it's coming anyway. So,
and they will have their turn.
Yes, right. And essentially, there's a framework to it. At least that's how I view it. You know that there's that you have contracts that are unsettled, and one of the largest contracts that's currently unsettled is the police department. And so this budget contemplates that the police department will be settled in the current year. And then, so all that retro will be paid out in the year that we're in. So we have I would say probably, another 3 months. And then, the rest of it, in terms of other contracts, reflects, as Frank's identified and others have, when you look at the salary detail and you don't see an increase, in all likelihood, those will involve increases once contracts get settled. The largest group, which is outstanding, other than police, which I mentioned earlier, would be fire. And then you also have other items that typically we hit contingency for, depending on where you fare with storms, depending on where you fare with legal costs, and sometimes on the appeal end as well.
Okay. Other questions on the contingency budget here? Questions from the board? Questions from the RTM members or general public? Frank, you got a question?
I don't have any on this one, but I do have
Okay.
some in the future, though.
Just checking.
Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Alex?
Joe, sorry, this is out of order, but I know you want to know this, but 8:18 left to go in the game. Spencer Engstrom scored the goal.
Oh.
1-0.
Thank you for that information. Okay. Next is the principal debt service budget on page 52.
And typically what I do is I look at 52 and 53 together. You know, these are the payments that are due on the town's outstanding debt. Most of it is all bonded debt, with the exception of $125,000, which is it's a separate loan, zero interest loan. It was $500,000 for 4 years, and that was some of the financing that we used for the what we'll call the energy conservation project, the $6 million that was appropriated probably about 1.5 years ago. Additionally, it anticipates us having a debt issue within the next, within the new fiscal year. And again, that we anticipate will be in the market for the foreseeable future. You know, essentially we have, I would say, close to probably $48 million to finance for the middle school. You know, we roughly have the $3.4 million for the library, and then other unfinanced balances. One of the other ones is the community center, the firehouse at Indian Neck. We chose not to issue debt for. Tried to reduce some of the debt by using money that we had allocated for teachers' retirement payments that didn't come to fruition. And so again, this includes an issue in the next fiscal year, and so there would be an interest payment in the next fiscal year.
Thanks, Jim. Questions on this budget, the principal debt service budget in particular? Questions from the general public, RTM members? Again, the interest piece of it is the next budget, Jim. It's pretty much goes hand in hand. Any other comments on that particular budget?
No, really that just represents, the new item there is that if we have an issue next year, that there would be a semi-annual interest payment that would be due.
Okay, questions on the interest budget? All right. Questions from the RTM members or general public on this budget? Now move on to Board of Finance budget on page 12.
Okay, the Board of Finance budget is essentially the board clerk, Lisa, our audit, and the actuarial services, which we use to do our evaluations and some of our GASB reporting. The advertising, printing, and binding is for the annual report. I anticipate we'll have a presentation of the audit at the next regular Board of Finance meeting, and at some point, probably soon after that, we'll need to appoint auditors for the next fiscal year. And according to Connecticut state statute, for towns that have a Board of Finance, the Board of Finance is the appointing authority for the auditors.
Thanks, Jim. It's again a request of $92,654, increase of $1,051. Questions on this budget? Questions from RTM members, members of the public? Thank you. If not, we'll go on to fiscal services, page 13. Request of $462,775, increase of $6,520. Jim, you want to comment?
Yeah, essentially the largest area of the budget is really the wage piece, and we have 3 employees in the finance department who are covered under a union contract that expires on June 30th, so they're budgeted for no increase currently in the budget. The other item which you've seen throughout the night is accrued payroll. And just a quick reminder, some folks may say, well, what is that? What we do in Branford is to avoid, and this was a practice that happened before I was here, but what Branford does is instead of having a 53rd week, sometimes you get a 53rd week the way the calendar falls, is we basically account for the number of days in a fiscal year. So for example, in years like last year where it worked out perfectly, you had basically 52 weeks, so that ended up working out to 260 working days, and then this year we have 262 days. So those other 2 days is what that accrued payroll is.
Thanks, Jim. Questions on this budget from the board members?
I'll throw one out at you, Jim. Back to the Board of Finance. We have the audit and the actuarial services in the Board of Finance. Why wouldn't they be more appropriate in in fiscal services?
Because they work for us. They actually, the Board of Finance actually contracts with those folks to do the work.
The Board of Finance?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, you wouldn't want, if I had appointment power over the auditors and I'm the one that's being audited.
Oh, I see.
I know that works in companies,
Yeah,
but,
a little conflict. Yeah, okay.
So they actually work for the board.
yeah. That's why you get the SAS letter. That's why you get.
That's why it's addressed to the board.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, any other questions about these budgets tonight? If not, then we will recess the public hearing until tomorrow night. And thank you all for attending, and I would like to also congratulate the boys hockey team. They won the championship.
Oh, they did?
According to Alex, they won the championship 2-0. So
Hey.
Division II champs, my grandson and others for the team, congratulations.
Hey, all right.
Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Brantford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BrantfordTV.org.